have 40 to 50,000 candidates. And here is 2010 to 2015. In the past 5 years, and the level 1 is offered twice in a year, so you have 2 blue graphs. And then for level 2 and level 3, once in a year. Level 2 is about 45,000 average. And when you go to level 3, its number is much lower. It's about 20 to 25,000. But things we mentioned, this test requires a lot of commitment. So usually, there's about 25% no-show, because a lot of the CFA candidates, they're actually full-time employees, they have to work. So think about, you have to spend 300 hours study. It means every day for 3 hours you have to study 100 days. No play, no fun. A lot of people cannot commit to this. And then, even though we have such a high participation number, the pass rate was kind of low for level 1. Because it's kind of overwhelming for a lot of people first taking the CFA level 1 test. And the things, the entrance requirement was low, you just have to need a bachelor degree. So usually level 1 is only have average 40% pass rate. And once you weed out the participants, you have a higher pass rate in level 2, around 43, 44%. And then if you go to level 3, you will have half the people pass level 3. So when you ask people which one is the toughest one, they will say, I wish I can skip level 1. And here's the career path for a CFA charter holder once they earn the charter. This is a pie chart. According to the survey we're taking, about 22% of the CFA member, they become portfolio managers. About 50% in research analysts, and then 7% as chief executives. And then there are a lot of other small categories, and then some 11% is like others are not identified. And if you know this, I wonder what's the question you're going to ask next. Is it anything about money? You want to know how much it helps your salary? So here is a chart to show how much salary increase after you pass each level of CFA. Assuming you are a CFA candidate at 100%, if you pass level 1, you will get a 6% salary increase on average. If you pass level 2, generally speaking, 27% salary increase. If you become a charter holder, that's 34% salary boost. But I have to also emphasize, this is also based on the industry you're in. So assuming the CFA on average earns 100%, the people getting the biggest salary is in investment banking. They're 42% higher than average. Fund manager about 37%, and the equity or fixed income research analyst about 28%. And then private wealth management about 3% above average. Once you're going down this part, you can see their salary is actually below the CFA members' average. So when they're in operation or other financials, you actually didn't see a big boost or big increase in your salary. So that's why it's actually some fun facts. And look at the 1963, the people taking the CFA test, they're more like well-suited Wall Street people. They have glasses on, they look very professional. And nowadays, when you take a CFA test, you have a much wider group of people from all races, all ages, and they just want to take the test to get into the financing industry. So in conclusion, CFA is not right for everyone. CFA actually is designed for people that are serious investment professionals. They want to do security analysis or portfolio management. And given this task takes so much time and money and effort, if you are not serious about become investment professionals, I would not suggest you take the CFA test. And that's it for my presentation. Any questions?
Good, excellent, excellent. Comments for Yang? Yes, Jerry.
I think she kept the eye contact pretty well.
Yeah, great eye contact. Consistent eye contact. Levy.
I think she did a really, really good presentation. I'm not going to go into details, but
Good. What did you say about details?
I said I'm not going to go into specific details, but just overall.
Details, all right. Vanessa?
I thought your slides were really well put together. It was enough that it led me to what you were going to talk about next, but it was there enough that I had to pay attention to what you were saying. I thought at the beginning when you said something about for an example, I think you said something like, well, you're probably wondering why everybody will do this money, right? And then the next slide was like salary increases. Where I kind of got a little bit lost was with the percentages. I wasn't clear on, I know you started off with 100% and it was like 1 over 3. So that was a little bit,
Oh, this one or the other?
yeah, I'm not used to seeing charts that way, so that's probably why it took me a bit. Eventually I got it. But I thought you had really nice transitions, great eye contact, really good content, so very good.
Yeah, good comments. So a lot there. I want to talk about the graphs in a moment, but very conversational to Vanessa's point. Good transitions. She used the lead transition technique with money. She said, I bet you're wondering about this. Yeah, of course we're wondering about this. And she set that up nicely. Great conversational position with eye contact and body language. Her body language is good. I would have liked to have seen just a little more of a solid stance, like zig-zag zoom. There was a little roaming, and I just think a more stable stance would have added a level of professionalism and would have kept your conversational tone. Great bullets. Vanessa, I think, also mentioned that. She had just enough where we could follow along, but we were not distracted. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the graphs. So you can go ahead and have a seat. Stay in the hot seat long enough. So, okay, so a couple of thoughts. All right, so the first one, all right, my thought on her graphs were they were interesting visually, but I was just confused as the point she was making for these graphs. And I think this presentation would have benefited from possibly fewer graphs, but definitely more, this is the takeaway. And I mentioned last time in one of the team presentations that use the take technique, the title, axes, key takeaway, and elaboration. It forces you to think about the point to your graph, and it forces you to make some changes just by using those terms. So this is participation number. So we've got level 1, level 2, level 3. Okay. Yeah, so I guess I'm not seeing a clear point to this graph, and it is awfully confusing to look at. So first you have to look at 1, 2, 3. I guess you notice that fewer people participate in the higher levels. But then she also has this interesting thing where she's got the December dates, where we have the large number of level 1 candidates. So it technically gives us information, but I don't know why. And I don't know why I need to invest in understanding this graph. Would y'all think that's fair? Yes, great.
No, I was saying actually she went into explaining it. So I actually was pretty comfortable listening to her. But she went into the details. She explained what A and B is and things like that. Yeah, I was a little bit lost towards the beginning, but when she went on to explaining it, I kind of quickly got it.
Yeah, but what's her point to this graph? Like, what's the value here, Graham?
I mean, she's trying to compare the different levels, how many participants you get. But I feel that instead of a bar, we could probably have tried to like a what's the name for it?
Line graph.
Line graph, yeah.
A line graph. I would say a line graph and just one of each. Level 1, level 2, level 3. We don't need all this information. We just get a sense of, a lot of people take level 1, not disseminating to level 2. Yeah. All right, and we've got this. I have a similar comment here. I don't know if this is worth the explanation to say how many people no show. And this one, I had concerns about this graph. Now this was, I think was an interesting, important takeaway for this graph, or potentially some. Does anyone remember what's the main point of this graph? Jack?
Show the pass rate
The pass rate. Okay, but can you be more specific?
based on the level of test taking.
Is she making a statement, a conclusion, a key takeaway with this graph?
I think this is an indication of the level of commitment as a candidate progresses through the levels. So the higher up in levels that you are, the more committed, the more time you go to the trade, or not trade, to the study, and therefore having
okay, so the takeaway is that pass rates go up
Right.
as you go through the graph. Okay, so let's come back to that in a minute, but just visually, and I'm not seeing something that makes sense. I'm seeing some yellow dots, and I guess it looks like it's sort of going up over time, and I'm seeing some, I guess, level 2. So, oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait, no, yeah, okay, so the blue, so I guess we've got a trend here. Yeah, so she's using a line graph, which leads us to think that maybe there's a trend we need to notice. But if her point to this graph is that she just wants to show the pass rate going up, I think she can combine this in maybe a 1 bar graph with 3 points, just like the previous one. But this is actually, this idea is something I have interestingly thought about a lot. So level 1, so sometimes the pass rate is higher in level 1 than level 2. But the thing about level 2 and level 3, let's see what you all think about this. These are all the people that would already passed the previous level. So even if you pass level 1 and level 2, still only 50% of those highly committed people pass level 3. I think that's kind of interesting. What do you think?
Well, I would say level 3 is accumulated, so maybe you can pass in the year before you may pass the next year, but you will come as the failure of the last year and you test this year. So I still will, some people will not be able to pass, but I think it will be a little bit higher than
But I thought it's just so shocking that even after you pass, so I think I've heard people say, oh, the pass rates go up for level 3, because level 3 is a little bit easier or whatever, but what they're forgetting when they say that is these are all the people who have passed level 1 and level 2, but in the 300 hours each of those 2 years, and still half of them fail. I think that's like, it's a nuance.
That's why it's not right for everybody.
Yes. Okay. All right, great, fantastic. Any other comments? Got to move on.
All right.
Helen, so regular pointer if you need it, forward, backwards, and blank screens at the bottom left or bottom.
I'm so excited because I've never, presented a whole case by myself. Today I would like to share a business case with you guys and what is the problem and how to solve this problem and reach our, the best solution. Mahindra technique may be familiar with this case. Mahindra is a leading India automotive makers. It was weighing for available options in 2010. However, there are some pros and cons related to each option, so which one is the best? It's not that easy for Mahindra to make the final decision. So today, we're gonna help Mahindra to evaluate these 4 options and get our final solution. So this is my presentation agenda. I will use a couple of minutes to, introduce some background information about Mahindra's performance and sales in South Africa, and then take a deep dive into the decision-making process, evaluate the opportunities, and then quickly eliminate 2 options out of 4, and then focus on the rest of the 2 options. And then if you don't know what I'm talking about in the following couple of minutes and you have no idea, it doesn't matter because in the end, I will give you a brief summary to let you know what is the best solution for Mahindra. In 2010, Mahindra's performance and sales in South Africa was not that ideal because it was coming out of economic recession. It sold 1,555 units that year. Its market share was only 24%. However, if we look on the bright side, the overall South Africa automotive market was ideal. Its growth rate was about 24%, triple what we expected. And also, the buying power of middle class was rising. They prefer to buy international brands, so Mahindra is the Indian brand, so it's eligible for being the international brand. So at least we can take advantage of it to attract more customers from South Africa area. And as I mentioned before, there are 4 available options. I will introduce them one by one. The first one is wait and watch. You may be wondering that what does CPU means? It stands for completely built up vehicles. That means Mahindra planned to continue with its current business model in South Africa and produce and assemble fully assembled cars in India and then import them from India to South Africa and then sell them only in South Africa. And the second one is use South Africa as a hub to import and export its complete vehicles. A little bit different from the first option. We are not only focused on South Africa market, but also we want to export our complete vehicles to the other countries in Africa. And the third option for us is contract assembling. That means we want to produce all the components and parts in India and then import them from India to South Africa, and also we may ask the local assemblers to help ask them to assemble the complete vehicle for us. So import CKD. CKD stands for completely knocked down vehicle. And the last one is manufacturing facility. Obviously, that means we want to build up a completely new facility in South Africa and outsource the components or parts locally or from India, and then assemble the car in South Africa, and then sell some of them locally and the others, export it to the other countries in Africa. So 4 options are very, confused. So let me quickly eliminate 2 of them and focus on only 2. The first one I'm gonna eliminate is wait and watch option because even though there are some considerations, support this option. For example, the micro environment in South Africa was not that ideal. So many considerations like social unrest, labor unrest, whatever, and also overcapacity is a prevalent issue for almost all automotive makers. And also, in 2010, the global economics is not fully recovered, so all of these information might be, support this option. However, if we just wait and watch while other makers are moving on, it's very likely for us to lose the overall South African market. So this option is gonna be ruled out in the first place. And the second one is use South Africa as a hub. It's very costly in the long run because based on what we forecasted for demand by 2020, which will be almost 18,000 units by 2020. So we can do a simple calculation based on the background information, 25% import duty. So I assume if we produce a complete vehicle in India or South Africa the same, let's say $100, and once we ship it from India to South Africa, 20% of shipping fees will be added on, and once we receive it in South Africa, another 25% import duty would be also added on. So now the cost of goods becomes $150 instead of $100 if we produce it locally. So the cost will be 50% higher. So this option is going to be ruled out in the second place. So going through two rounds, only two options left. One is contract assembling, the other one is manufacturing facility. So how to evaluate these two options? We have to build criteria and put weight to each of them, depending on how important it is. Let's say demand analysis, I assign 40% to it, and level of investment 35%, and the rate of 25%. And let us analyze one by one. This map is African map. We selected and ranked our target countries based on population growth rate, GDP growth rate, and the buying power of middle class. So tier 1 countries are our first priorities, and then tier 2 countries and the tier 3. And this graph shows us the demand forecast. This blue one is South Africa demand by 2020, and the top one is about the overall African automotive market. And based on Mahindra's performance and sales in South Africa and its competitors' performance and sales in the other countries in Africa, so by 2020, our potential demand in South Africa will be 9,000 units, and as a whole, in Africa, our demand will be 18,000 units by that year. And there are some other background information tell us it's possible to set up a new facility in South Africa with annual sales of 6,000 units every year. So if we look at 2014, before this year, our potential demand will be less than 6,000. So that's why I scored contract assembling 9 points and new facility only 7 points. And the next one, I'm gonna analyze the level of investment. Contract assembling, if we sign a 5-year contract with assemblers in South Africa and share 5% profit with them, our required investment will be 44 million rands. Rands is South African currency, so 8 rands is equal to $1. And our own facility, unfortunately, we didn't get any information about how much amount of money to set up a new facility. However, based on what we got during doing the research, Toyota reinvested 1 million rands to add one more model in its existing facility with capacity of 55,000 units. So based on those information, we calculated our potential upfront investment, which will be 364 million rands. So compare these two, it's very obviously the own for manufacturing costs a lot. So that's why I put 10 to contract assembling, but only 5 to our own facility. And the last one is race. We all know that the microenvironment in South Africa is not that ideal. There are several uncertainties we have to face. Let me give you a very simple example to demonstrate what will be going on once the risk occur. In 2013, South Africa experienced a 4-week labor unrest, and more than 30,000 laborers didn't do anything during that period of time. And more than almost 4 major makers suffered $2 billion loss in its output. So we can imagine that if something happens to us similar to it, how much of money we have to, so that's why I put heavy impact under facility and mild impact under contract assembly. And the same way to evaluate the rest of 5. And then sum up how many mild impact for each of them. So 4 miles for contract assembly, 2 miles for own facility, which in turn influences performance. So contract assembly got 8 points and own facility got only 4 points. So this is a weighted scorecard during demand analysis. Contract assembly got 9 points times 40% weighted criteria is equal to 3.6. And the same way to calculate the rest of these things. And in total, contract assembly got 9.1 and manufacturing facility got 5.55. So it's obviously who got the higher point when this case competition. So contract assembly win. Let's do a brief summary because a lot of information there. Contract assembly is the best one among the 4 options. You just invest 44 million rands. You can guarantee your production about 1,800 units by 2020. And also we can sign a 5-year contract with assemblers in South Africa. And by 2015, if we review and look back, we can change our strategies for the future. So also during these 4 or 5 years, we can cater to both local and export market. Fair enough. Thank you. I know I took a long time to present this case.
Okay, so a presentation followed by an apology. Alright, good. Comments for Helen? Yana?
Okay, I really like the contents of the presentation because I know it's a technical presentation. I can see that she did a lot of work. And some of them are not just a very, general skills, like let's say Excel. She did a scorecard. It's a very, financial related, and it's something you have to learn. I've been trying to learn that myself. But I do have a question for her though. Since you mentioned about the 5-year contract, if you outsource, the assembling portion of your work to local Africa, assembler.
Maybe.
So if you sign a 5-year contract with them, and if, for instance, during, let's say, halfway through your project, 2 years later, for some reason, the market, in Africa dropped. The market is becoming less and less demanding for this type of vehicle.
Right.
Do you have to, if you sign a contract, do you have to make sure they have certain type of jobs to do? Like, do you still have to send in tests to them? Or otherwise, if you stop your production and if you kind of, you still have the contract with them, but you're no longer assigning jobs to them to do, will that, affect the
contract assembling? I think that means is we just sign a contract with local assembler, but not we set up any facilities or hire the laborers to work for us.
Okay. So as long as you're producing in Africa, you will be working with them.
Yes. If we set up our new facility in South Africa, we have to hire the laborers and the top management.
Okay. And if you don't have any further, projects, you don't want to produce anymore, do you have to pay them still, or?
I think the capacity. So that's why I think what you're asking is about overcapacity.
Yes.
All right. Actually, we have several things. The first one we produce for ourselves, the Mahindra's brand, and second we can how to say that, we can use our I'm sorry, how to say that?
You know, I think I'll kind of in this line of questioning, I think what the takeaway, as far as I'm concerned, is that there's a lot of interest in these specific details, and you
We can
clearly,
discuss it later, okay?
yes, and you clearly followed what she was trying to say enough to ask an intelligent question like that. And I'd like to point out a couple things she did to make her presentation so accessible, unless anyone wants to beat me to it. Free.
I think the tracker was really a great idea.
Brilliant. Have you used a tracker before?
This one?
Yeah. Have you used this before?
I think this is the first time I do that.
Yeah, I think the tracker was key. The scorecard was also very helpful in guiding us through this very technical presentation. What else do we got? What else do we have?
I'm still lost at that, the graph of Africa and then the little graph.
Yeah, I want to talk about that graph in a minute, but as far as good things, we've got the tracker, we got the scorecard. And look at the way she did this. You got the 1, 2, 3, 4 options, and boom, they scroll through there. However she did it, so we could see where she was. Option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4. So you had a couple of challenges. One, this was a lot of technical details. 2, I think because English is your second language, that manifests in a couple ways. And one, you speak a lot. You say a lot of different things, and you speak with a very consistent tone. A lot of times, native speakers will use more vocal variety. And you know, we can discuss this more. I'm not saying you should, but I'm just raising the point that native speakers will speak with vocal variety. They'll slow down. They'll accent certain words more carefully because they're fluent speakers and they know how to talk with those nuances. But because you don't, we need a little extra to follow what you're saying. And because you did such a great job with presenting in the PowerPoint, I think we were able to very effectively follow all those words. If it was just her speaking for 20 minutes in that consistent tone, I dare say we would just kind of not be able to follow it. Let's talk about this graph that Priya mentioned. All right, yeah, this was a little tough. So we see this increase in demand, which is a fair point. And then we've got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And then I got a little confused. It's like, so this is, I guess, this is tier 2. Is that tier 2, Helen?
No.
Is this tier? But this is exports. Yeah, exports. Yeah, that's right.
Export.
Exports tier 1. All right, so this is exports tier 1, exports tier 2,
Sorry.
and then tier, wait a minute. This is tier 2. But I thought tier 2 was yellow. Okay. So there was a lot in this graph, and I like one key takeaway. Go ahead.
I just put the color randomly, so
Okay.
there's no relation between these two graphs.
Okay.
I
So
was trying to find the correlation.
right, and me too. So I think a graph I'm not saying you need to dumb down a graph. It can have a lot of complicated information, but the first thing I want to see is the key takeaway. So we can see, here's the title, here's the axes, here is the increase, the trend increase. Now, let's break that down a little bit. Let's look at tier 1, let's look at tier 2, let's look at all this complicated nuanced stuff, which you can bring in as long as your audience is clear about the point of the graph. Yes?
If you really have that much information, how should you emphasize, or like which part you think you should emphasize or simplify to retain the attention? Because I think it's a lot of information. I would never choose to pick a topic like this to do a presentation.
So, all right, so I mean, I think what would be the one key takeaway of this graph? I think it would probably be something to the effect of overall demand is rising. All right, so that's the key takeaway. Now we can break it down further and say, now let's look, you might be able to do with animation effects where you click and the blue part is highlighted. And you can say, look at that growth in South Africa as well. And depending on what you want to say with the tier 2, You might say that we're going to experience a high percentage growth in tier 1, but it's not going to be an overall part of our demand. You could break it up that way, but as long as you're clear about the overall purpose, it depends on what your following points are as to how you might break it down. Break it down.
The general comment, and this is the first time I actually have seen this, and which is great. I mean, she has a question underneath every heading. I have never seen myself, but I mean, that's something, if that helps her to sort of orient herself while she was talking. I just wanted to gauge, is this because of that, or the questions underneath the
Yeah, I like that. That's a great point. Everyone notice that? So we've got the title, topic, and we've got a key question for this slide. And that may have been worth a little bit more attention. Maybe we're explaining the topic in the graph, or the PowerPoint, and then pausing for this question. And that'd be a point where you can pause and let it sink in. Just let the audience get a little eager for which option best handles risk. Okay, now I'm going to learn. Eager for it. Good. Other comments? Yes.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
The page before we talked about local currency, I think if you're talking to US audience, depends on what audience you have. Maybe it's better for you to convert to US dollar, so it's easier for them to understand and compare. It's just from my work experience when I was for other foreign investment, my boss he was saying, how much is the US dollar?
Oh, but how about this graph? I think this is a really great graph as far as her point. Her point is, look at how much more this investment is than this investment. So she uses one simple bar graph. I'd rather invest 44 than 364. That sounds like a safer option to me. And someone as smart and talented as you, who does this great scorecard and great tracker, of course I'm going to trust your decision, trust your advice.
Actually, this case was the previous case from a case competition, and 4 of us work on this case, but not as only one person. So today, like I mentioned before, I presented all by myself, so it's a really challenge for me. And a huge calculation, assumptions behind this case. So to be honest, I simplify a lot of work. This is not the overall picture of that case. I simplify a lot.
Wow. All right. Awesome. Thank you very much, Anna. Excellent. So I mentioned last week that those of you who did not present, you can turn in your presentation at any time between now and class 9. And if you would like to present, let me know. We'll find some space at the end of following classes or office hours if we need to for you to present and get the same kind of feedback. So we'll move on now with our discussion of emails, memos, text messages, social media, and finish up with our social media communications and the Dell case. So, is there some, I think Josh has some. All right, so we'll discuss a couple things with this. First, we'll start with emails. We'll go over some best practices. I don't want to give anyone the impression that I think you don't know how to do emails, but I think it's useful. Everyone else needs left? But I think it's useful to go over some effective best practices. We'll go over that with emails, and then we'll do a similar discussion with memos, and then I'll explain a memo assignment that is due, I think, next week, and see if you have any questions about that. So, we're going to emails, memos, yada yada, bum bum. Let's start off with emails. I'm just going to work through, just hit a few high-level basics. I brought a sample email for you. We've got a 2 at the top, we've got CC, we've got subject, we'll discuss the appropriate salutation, the appropriate sign-off. So let's just start right at the top. We've got address to, sometimes you're writing to more than one person, sometimes you'll put more than one address in the to, sometimes you'll put it in a CC or BCC. So let's discuss that. On what occasions do you as professionals and as business students think it is appropriate to put the address in the to box versus the address in the CC box? Can someone just give me the outline, give me the bullet points on that?
I think for CC, it's usually like if you want to, like for example, like for 2, you might send it to your manager, and CC might be saying to the rest of your team to know that you have this issue.
Okay, all right, so what are you telling the rest of your team by putting them in the CC? What message are you sending?
That I raised the issues to the manager.
Okay, so you're just keeping them in the loop
Yeah.
of what's happening.
Yeah.
Now, does anyone know what CC stands for? What does CC stand for? Does someone tell them?
Carbon copy.
Carbon copy. Has anyone ever seen one of those old carbon copy memos? Priya seen one? You've seen one? I remember my elementary school had one years and years ago. And so it's a white piece of paper on top with this carbony thing that if you touch it, you get your fingers dirty. And then there's a yellow piece or a red piece and a green piece below that. So if you actually got one of those carbon copies, you had this very distinct visual reminder that you didn't get the main letter. You just got something tangential to that. Something that you know you're being kept in the loop. It's the same concept, it's just not as obvious when we do it over email. So let me ask you, what is the danger? What if you CC someone and they say, well, why wasn't I on the to field of that? Why am I not the primary person that should be involved in this email? What harm could that come or result in you and your professional career? Yes.
Well, just to answer your question, but I also like to use some of the examples when I would use CC or not to use CC. If I spoke with a group of people, so let's say if it's an interview, I spoke with a number of them. Some of them could be the hiring manager, some of them could be someone else from other departments who doesn't really make a crucial decision on my hiring process. To be polite and to have the general standards as an MBA, I would recommend you put everybody on the to section, not just somebody, the hiring manager on the to and someone else in the CC. But if at work you're trying to communicate with somebody directly, and somehow in the process you run into some kind of communication problems, you like someone else from the about to notice about this type of communications you're having without directly telling them. I might put the directive on the CC section just to
Okay, so just to let them know about the communication issue.
Right.
Okay, well, what if it's a project like Jerry mentioned that you just want to keep them in the loop, kind of thing?
It really depends on the
You would still put them in the to section?
maybe CC. It really depends on the situation and how well I know the person and how will that, based on my understanding of the other parties and how will this behavior affect the way they feel about me. And usually, like I explained, once you put somebody in the CC section, you just kind of want them to know, but you don't really want to directly communicate with them.
Yes, yeah, okay, I would agree with all that, great.
I think, there's a problem, like you said, with the authority. When you're writing to somebody, and let's say somebody else is probably the same status in the company, but if you CC him on the email instead of to, you might think, oh, I'm being undermined on this project. So it's a sense of authority sometimes can be an issue.
So somebody is a key person on this project, they would often want to be in the to section. And if you put them in the CC, one, they might feel undermined, but two, it's just mentally confusing. People have hundreds of emails they need to sort through, and you're sending them a message, this is something you're being kept in the loop, or this is something you're a key part of. And you want to make sure that you get those records. Now, to the point of someone maybe feeling undermined, let me ask you, does anyone have any opinions about the order in which you might put people in the to section? Would you put them in alphabetical? Would you just put them in random order? Anyone have any thoughts about that? Yeah?
I usually will put in order depending on where they are to my task.
Okay, so in order of importance to your task. Anyone else have any other thoughts?
People read the order of who to send to.
Yeah, so what order do you put them in?
No, I just put it in like who would first come in my mind. I wouldn't calculate most important or alphabetical or anything.
Okay,
I've
all
never,
right, so random strategy and most important to the project. Anyone else have any? Eric?
You already put the same order and seconds in my primary content. For example, I put jams in the to section, and
and in the email content I say, dear
Okay,
Jack.
all right, so if you're, so you're writing to Jack, but what if you're writing to a team of like 5 people?
In that case, I think that just
Doesn't
put
matter?
5 team
Okay.
members
All
in.
right, so random order doesn't matter, importance of the project, anything else?
I've always created distribution lists, like my own personal distribution list, just to avoid that, because I've been in places where different managers will do different things with that. So I kind of just make my own distribution list where all they can see is the distribution list name.
Oh, that's a good strategy. Now let me bring up this point, and I think this plays into my next point, which is, what if someone gets offended that you put someone lower ranking than them earlier in the to section? Like you'll put, you know, an executive assistant or a project manager, and then you'll put the CFO after that. Would the CFO get mad and say, why am I the 3rd person in the to section? Have any of you experienced that? Have any of you thought of something like that happening?
What if I may want direct response from you, but not the CFO? That's why I put you on first. The CFO is kind of just trying to inform.
In that case, I would say that the CFO is CC, right? I'm talking about everybody in the to section. And I want to make the point that sometimes people can get offended if you get that order in a way that is contrary to their rank in the company.
I think if somebody's a CFO, my person shouldn't get offended by such an insignificant slide.
Yeah, well, it can happen. I worked in life insurance in my finance experience, and that's the way we did it.
When we talk about emotional intelligence, we will talk about it, I think. Obviously, from an action point of view, yeah, you should take it into consideration, but when you're in the receiving end, you shouldn't take it into consideration.
Okay, so here's the problem with emotional intelligence. We want to be as emotional intelligent as possible, but we can't expect everyone else to be. We have to realize the reality. Somebody may be offended by the way we present this. And it was common in the industry I was in. It's common in a lot of finance firms, is to be very careful about the order in which you put the two in. And you just put that in your minds to think about for further consideration.
So you say it should be in order of importance?
That is one strategy. That was appropriate for an environment that I worked in. It could be that justified to put it in order of importance to the project. So the person reading it says, oh, I understand why they put me 3rd. You could use Natalie's method of a distribution list where no one gets to see. But the point I want to raise is if you're in an environment where you think people might be offended, then be cognizant of that. Okay, so we got some basic best practices on 2, we know CC, subjects we'll talk about a little bit later. Let me just throw out some ideas on this salutation. This one says, Dear Hiring Manager. So this is dear, to, hey, yo. How do we want to do the salutation, Josh?
Well, I actually just had a question
Yeah.
about the last thing that you were discussing the options. One of the things you had thrown out earlier was alphabetical. Is that like an out if someone's like, well, why am I so late? Well, it's like, it's just alphabetical. Like,
I've heard of that strategy. But what if it's only to 3 people? You can't really tell that it's in alphabetical order. And the person with the last letter W says, well, wait a minute. I'm the VP of marketing. Why am I the last person? Or there's only 2 people, even worse. Yeah, I have heard of that as a strategy if there's a lot of people, but I'd be cognizant of that. All right, so salutation. What do we like? Dear, to, hey, yo. Does anyone have any best practices to share with us on that? Great.
It's a formal relationship. I always start with dear, and if that's somebody who I have met and I know a little bit more, then I can go informal, like hello or hi.
Okay, so formal, you like dear in emails? Who likes dear in emails? Raise your hand if you like dear in emails. All right, so a couple of people. Josh, you're going maybe. When do you think you like dear, and when do you think you like something else?
I don't know. I guess the one I just somehow dear to me always sounds like you're writing like a letter to a family member or something like that. I think of actually mailing something in the mail. So sometimes I like attention. Whoever, but that's like almost stilted sounding. I don't know, so I actually don't know what the best way to go is. I'm just
Okay, I would agree with that. I think dear is a little bit formal, and it is often too formal for an email. I would often recommend that you just put the person's name. I think that carries enough formality. Ms. Sanchez, Mr. Blunt. I would recommend that for an email. A dear can send a message that you're just not really in touch with the formality or the level of formality in emails. Now,
So what if you just wrote Susan?
Susan, if first names are appropriate in that context, I would say Susan could be okay.
Can you say like good morning, Susan, would that be?
I think that's good. Good morning, Susan. Hello, Susan. Yeah. Dear, I would use dear cautiously. It sends the message maybe that you're a young MBA trying to get a job and you don't really know how you should, what level of formality that you take this. What do you think, Priya?
I don't know. I don't see and here we always like keep talking about start with dear hiring manager or dear Mr. This. So I kind of get a conflicting
Okay.
message here. So I don't know.
Okay. So take that with a grain of salt. And, all right.
No, but I get your point that, you know, it's a bit too formal. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So and we've got a little signature here. One thing I wanted to bring up with the signature, my recommendation is I like a concise signature, a one-line signature. So when you're going back and forth with these emails, you don't have that huge, this is all my information. Or if you're emailing someone who's in a financial firm or a law firm, they have like a huge disclaimer. So when you're trying to read emails, you have like blocks of text that you have to sort through. I like a one-line signature. It's worked out well for me. I think it makes a clean, concise message, clean, concise email. All right. So any other comments on emails? Anyone want to go over that? Yes.
I want to ask this. How do you, I always struggle with this, how do you end your email? Is I see different people doing different things, sincerely, best regards, or just best, or, lots of other different things. So what would you suggest, and in terms of like for being formal and not so formal?
Okay. The way I do it is I just put best, comma. Did I put it here? Yeah. Best, comma, exactly. If you want to make it a little less formal, you could erase the best and just put a slash here. If you need to, just end it with a little sign of respect. I like best. And best is very neutral. I would avoid sincerely. That gives it the formal letter feel. Same reason I don't like dear. I don't like sincerely. Does anyone else have any preferences on the way they end their emails? Yeah.
I like regards.
Regards is good. I think regards is like best. It's a good neutral term.
How about kind regards?
Sure. Kind regards. Truly yours. I know lawyers I've seen often in their emails or letters, very truly yours. I mean, that is a lawyer theme for some reason. If you're a lawyer, that can work for you. All right, great. So let's move on to memos. And let me ask you this before I discuss memos. Who can sum up the difference between an email and a memo for us? Let's think about it in two levels. One, the level of formality. Two, the amount of interaction in each. So the level of formality in emails versus memos, and the amount of interaction that takes place between sender and receiver in emails and memos. Josh.
I guess emails, like how we were discussing before, have kind of a variety of formality. It could be more informal, more formal. A memo is generally a very formal thing that's been usually looked over by maybe more than one person, and it's crafted for a very specific purpose to convey a message to probably a group, and it doesn't really invite response most of the time, whereas emails can start a correspondence or not, but it's a possibility. Memo tends to be more of a statement piece.
Right. I would agree with all that. Anyone have anything to add to that? So an email is often less formal and invites a response. A memo is often more formal, like a statement, and it does not invite a response. And we'll talk about this a little bit more when I get to the memo assignment that we're going to go over shortly, how we want to, when we write our memo, construct something that can stand on its own. Then it might invite a dialogue. Come see us, come stop by the office, we can talk further, but that particular communication is not going to be a quick back and forth. It's going to be something that's more of a message, a formal message that can stand on its own. And just the basics. I know we don't write too many memos these days. We concentrate more on emails. There are a number of different formats you can use for a memo. This one's pretty simple. You might have a company letterhead at the top, the company and the person that the memo is coming from, the date at the top, the to, as Josh mentioned, often to a group of people. You might have a CC line, you'll have a from line, and a subject. And then when you start the memo, you will pretty much never put a dear, a salutation, never put a to. Similarly, you will pretty much never put a sincerely best, because all that information is contained in the to and the from. And it gives us that sense that it's just something that stands on its own. Any questions? All right, I just wanted to throw that for you. Yes,
So how does it end? Just
it ends.
it ends.
It ends. It just ends. You make a statement and then that's it, it's over. And that statement is designed to stand on its own, in conjunction with this information. You can get some information about the subject and who it's coming from and who's CC just by the layout of it. Great.
So Richard, I'm just curious about this. Would you write a memo if you're trying to distribute a piece of information instead of maybe asking for your ideas or thoughts about something which could be done in an email? Would you sort of?
Okay. Yes. So the question is, would you write a memo just more for presenting information,
Yeah.
and would you write an email more for getting thoughts and getting feedback? Let's think about the answer to that. Someone want to take a crack at it for me?
I think maybe that is generally the case, but I don't think you want to be issuing memos because memos are very formal. You know, can't be filling out memos every few times a day, or even every couple of days. You probably want to issue them because they're very important pieces of information that everybody needs to pay attention. Well, everything everybody should pay attention to. But if you kind of just throw out memos all the time, then it loses its significance.
What I like about the concept Levy is explaining is he's saying that this is a memo is something that gets more attention, it's more formal, people pay attention to it more. So I might say to you, if this is a bigger project, it's very important you get a lot of feedback, you want everyone to notice and you want everyone to give you that feedback, maybe a memo would be an effective way to do that. Maybe your email might get ignored. Maybe you said it's making a statement, to Levy's point, that this is a company priority, a department priority, that we need your ideas, we need your information. The memo illustrates that statement, it illustrates that priority. Good comments. Okay, so some tips on writing emails in terms of how you're going to approach your memo assignment. I start off with the presumption that anytime you write an email, anytime you write a memo, you're doing for a business need. Sometimes you'll want to be sensitive to the audience, but it's always because that serves a business need. And we'll talk about audience sensitivity, but we'll never forget that we're writing because we want to accomplish something that's effective for our business. Anything I teach you in this class, it will serve a business need. I won't tell you to communicate politely just because it's the right thing to do. I'll explain why it serves your business need. So, business needs you might need to accomplish in emails and memos. You might need to get your audience to know something, transfer information. You might need to get them to do something, take certain actions. You might need to get them to feel a certain way. In which case, we'll talk about how you do that. But just starting with the first two, need to know, need to do. We could talk in length about these, but I would say for these two, it comes down to clarity. you need your audience to know something, be clear, be concise. Similarly, if you need your audience to do something, take specific action, be clear. Put the actions at the prominent place in the email, not at the very end. Don't clutter it with a lot of information and say, oh, by the way, everyone needs to send me that report. So I would say these two come down to clarity. This third one we're going to discuss in a little bit more depth. I chose these words carefully. If you need to persuade or assuage your audience. So persuade means to actually convince them of a point of view. Assuage means to lessen the impact of a bad situation. So if there are layoffs coming up and you want to assuage your audience, lessen the impact of that, and it's important that they buy in to what you are presenting in terms of this is going to be a positive thing for the company, then you may need to use some skills to assuage your audience. So questions for you. What sort of techniques can we use if we need to persuade or assuage our audience? Which is going to bring in some audience sensitivity, which of course is all driven by business need. What sort of things can we do to make our emails a little bit softer, a little bit more subservient to our goal of making our audience feel something? Vanessa.
To your example about layoffs, I think one of the things that's helpful when things are trying to address the obvious sort of elephant in the room is addressing it and saying, we understand that you are apprehensive about the changes that have been happening. So acknowledging why they're apprehensive and then talking about what you're going to do. So I think laying out the big picture can take away a lot of anxiety. If we're doing this because we're trying to do this, that, and the third, I give people a sense of comfort that you're not just doing this just to do this.
Yeah. All right, acknowledging what's going on, being upfront, being honest. Good point. What else? And feel free to look on those slides and see some of the things I suggest. Try to put them in your own words, or add some things too if you need to. Now?
Sometimes people like to see you incorporate that word we.
We. Okay, so tell me about that. We. When do we want to use we? How does that?
Well, in bad situations, such as layoffs,
We're all.
employees want to see that, you're making it seem as though you're all one family, and this is affecting the whole family.
Okay. Okay, good. So we. All right. Could that backfire? Is my one thought. What if you're saying you're being laid off and we're all in this together?
Well, I find that a lot of the layoff emails come out after the layoffs have happened, so only the people that are left are actually seeing the emails.
Okay. Good. Good. Good point. Other things? Great.
I talk about the offer alternatives. It's like giving them another avenue. That okay, we are having this layoff, but these are the opportunities available that you might want to explore. So sort of, as a boss, giving that comfort to your direct reports,
Yeah.
kind of helps.
Yeah. All right. Overall, if you have alternatives, then offer them. All right. We can't sign you up for this type of insurance, but we have this type and this type. All right. We are going through layoffs, but we have this opportunity and this opportunity for you. You have alternatives, offer them. Fantastic. What else?
Try to think in the audience perspective. Let's say if I'm going to do what should I do?
Okay, so show with your memo or email that you understand your audience perspective. I understand this is a difficult time for you. I understand this may not be the decision you want. Here are some alternatives. Here are here's some language to indicate that we're struggling through this together. Alternatives, audience perspective, what else? Great.
I love the buffers if sincere.
Okay, what are buffers? Someone explain what buffers are and why we would sometimes want to use them, sometimes not? What's a buffer? Has anyone heard of a buffer before? Was there a buffer? Okay, do you know what a buffer is?
Sort of, not 100%.
Okay.
Kind
So-
of trying to be in between.
Yes. So a buffer, I have some bad news I need to deliver to you, but I start with something positive and I end with something positive. So I say, hey, I love that shirt you're wearing today.
Be better language.
I love that shirt. It's a fantastic shirt. Unfortunately, there's a problem with the assignment you submitted. It was late, so I had to take off 10 points. But I like those shoes, are great too. Okay. Now, did that one sound sincere? No. It's just Vanessa's waiting for the bad news, and she does not appreciate the compliment at the end. But if you can make it sincere, if there is truly something positive that you want to say, then buffers can work. I find this with employee disciplinary procedures. Early in my career, I managed this group of personal trainers in this fitness center. So a bunch of folks who were not necessarily used to following instructions, following management rules, and I had to kind of rein these folks in. And so every once in a while you have to write somebody up for something. And I found in that situation it was important to distinguish between the good things about that person and the bad thing that they did. So I think you're a great personal trainer. I think you've got these great qualities. I sincerely do. I honestly believe that. And I'm going to start off this conversation by telling you something that is true and positive. But in order to make you successful here, we need to avoid this, this, or this. So if you can say it sincerely, I think buffers are great. If you can't, don't. Yes?
Like for me, can you just start with I really like your skill set or this type of quality, and then, but I don't think you will be able to use something's position or something affect your performance, so you got laid off. Well, we have this good training opportunity to help you stress these aspects of skills. Is that a sincere way to do it?
What do you all think? Does that sound sincere to you?
Depends why you're getting laid off.
Depends why you're getting laid off, and I think it really depends if those things are true. If those things are true, then I think you can pull it off. You say, you know, your skill set is fantastic. If you can truly say that and they know you know it's true and they believe it, and that's going to lead to some positive things that might happen with other opportunities or put them in a positive position, then I think you can pull it off. If they just think you're blowing smoke at them, then I think that could make a bad situation worse. All right, what do we got here? So, yes?
Are you suggesting that in that scenario you don't end with another positive? I wasn't clear on what
Yang's suggestion was, could we start a layoff by saying your skill set is great?
I was talking about your situation with the gym where you talk because you're creative. With this,
Oh yeah, that's a good question. How would I end those things? They would end in a variety of ways. Sometimes with somebody, you know, stopping themselves from jumping across the table or storming out of the gym mad or threatening to slash my tires was a very common end to those situations. But I would circle back to something positive, especially if I meant it, and I usually did. Like, you know, thank you for going through that. This is just something we have to do to run an efficient team here, and I really hope you can take this the right way. All right. So show understanding. I think Frank mentioned that. Illustrate consideration. We thought over your candidacy carefully. We really did, and we decided to go another way. It could lessen the impact if you knew you were taken seriously in this decision. Explain rationale. This is why we did it. In terms of rationale, if you're the receiver of your memo and email, even though they don't like the news, if they say to themselves, well, if I were in their position, I would have done the same thing. If you can evoke that response, I think you've been successful in writing a difficult email. Be truthful. You don't want to lie in a situation where people are already emotional and already upset. Because people can smell lies. And if they do, they may think your whole email, everything you say is something they shouldn't trust. Even just some silly little inconsistency. You get the dates about when the consideration happened, and they scratch their head and said, well, wait a minute, but if you had already made your point then when I was, you know, on the plane on the way to you, somebody else at HR said something else, just being lied to. Offer alternatives, I think Priya mentioned. If you have them, do it. Buffers, if sincere. Indirect rejection. Okay, this is an effective one. You need to be clear that this is some sort of bad news or some sort of rejection. But if you can still be clear and do it indirectly, then I think that's fine. If you can say, instead of saying, no, we can't write you an insurance policy for 3 months, instead of saying that, you can say, the minimum insurance policy is for 1 year. You can say that in a way that's clear. It sounds a little more positive than, no, you can't do that. You can start by saying, yes, we have this alternative, and that's the thing that you could do. that's the thing that would be appropriate to do. So indirect rejection, if and only if it is clear. This last one. I think Natalie started to talk a little bit about this. Adjust audience emphasis. The key here, if you're delivering bad news, try to avoid the use of you. You were behind on the budget. You underestimated the costs. You did not deliver the service that you said you would. That's bad news, and if you use a lot of yous, the person reading it could feel very defensive. Instead, you might say, unfortunately for this project, it came in over cost. We weren't quite where we needed to be with the level of service, and there was this other thing. If it's a bad news, think carefully about using a lot of you. Now, if it's good news, use you. You're a great performer, you did this, you helped the team, yeah. That's what I mean by adjust audience emphasis. All right, so I think we're going to move on to subject lines, and that's going to give us all the information we need to think about the corporate memo that is due next week. How about I start with a question with you all? What is a good subject line? What do we want to accomplish with our subject line? Well, tell me. Somebody give us the outline. What do we want to accomplish with a subject line, either a memo or an email? Josh.
I guess it should be basic but clear, and let the recipient know kind of what they're about to get into.
Okay, so frame the topic. Very important. Clear. Basic. Yeah, all good stuff. It should be relevant to your audience. You want to find a way to make them interested in opening that email or interested in reading that memo. But at the same time, it should be as concise as possible, to Josh's point that we want clarity. And I think this is the balancing. People get hundreds of emails. You have to write it in a way where your audience says, that's relevant to me, and I want to open it up. But also concise enough where it's quick and easy for your audience to understand. Topic or conclusion. You've heard me talk a lot in this class that conclusions are the most important thing. Conclusions. Question for you though. In the topic of it, or the subject line of an email or memo, do you want to put the topic or the conclusion?
I think it depends on the message.
Okay. When would you want to put topic? When would you want to put conclusion?
Okay, if it's something that we have to work on together and come up with a conclusion together, then it should be the topic. But if it's if you're behind your fees or something, that's
Okay. Fees past due. You might put past due in the.
So that in itself is a conclusion.
Okay. All right. Great.
I would say I always put in topic, not giving away the entire email message. It
Okay.
is a concise way. I'm giving you a sort of an overview what I'm going to write about, what you're going to read about in the next few sentences.
Yeah, I like that. I favor that topic in the subject line, not because you want to hold things close to your chest and not give away, but just because it's the way your audience is used to receiving information. They can categorize it. Oh, I have an answer on that thing we talked about with the team, or here's the notes from that marketing meeting. It's just easier to absorb the information if we have the topic in the subject line. Now, how do we like Jing? You know, you messed me up by telling me ninja backwards, and now that I have like
that didn't help.
Zhening. All right, Zhening. How do we like Zhening's subject of the email that says past due? Would anyone? Okay, it's sufficient. It happens. Would you like receiving such an email? Probably won't open it. Past due. Well, you kind of have all the information you need. Past due. All right. If I don't have the money, I'll just ignore it. If I have the money, I'm gonna go. I'll be all stressed out, and I'll try to figure it out.
Question: if you are writing an email, like ask for information or inquiry, or one for ask for help,
Okay, so you're asking for help. You might say help needed. I'd say help needed is a good topic. And then in the body of your email, you can say, hey, I need information on that marketing stuff, or I would like to ask you about your experience at Procter & Gamble, or something like that. I'd say help needed could be good. Second.
If, for example, I'm trying to have a topic in order to discuss what's going to be the agenda and how we are going to come up with, how do we put that?
So you need to discuss an agenda with
Yeah,
your...
we need to discuss what are the plannings for and what the decision is going to be.
Okay, so do you need you want to propose a meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Propose a meeting for a decision.
Okay, so you might put meeting proposal, because you need to meet to discuss this. If you already have a meeting planned, you might put agenda for meeting, and then on the agenda you would say decide what stuff we need to go over when we plan this event. Anyone else have any ideas? Good. The thing that was interesting about the past due email is that sometimes bad news can be abrupt if it comes by surprise. Has anyone ever heard that before? Unsurprising bad news can be especially painful. And sometimes it can help your audience ease into that bad news by telling them, this is the topic, electricity bill. And then when they open up the email, they'll say, unfortunately, you're past due, we need to make arrangements, yada yada. Bad news that is surprising can be especially negative. So I would recommend you always frame surprising news. Let me show you some subject line examples. We'll go into a little bit of that and also just for fun. Let's look at these different subject lines, either a memo or an email, and tell me what you think about it. First subject line, you didn't get the job. How do we like that as a subject?
You don't need to read the email then.
You don't need to read the email. Exactly. Right? You might read the email because you're upset to see who are these people that would dare send me a subject line like that. How about this?
Good.
Good. All right. How about this subject? Notes.
Too vague.
Spam.
Spam. Too vague. What if it's from your team member who you just had a meeting with a couple of hours ago, and she knows, oh, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about?
I think you still have to specify it, because you might want to classify your documents for their use.
I agree. I would always specify. And the reason I did that lead-up section is I wanted to explain why someone might send that email, but that person would forget that maybe you're going to open the email 2-3 days from now, maybe you need to look back on it, maybe you've got 5 other things on your plate, notes for what? It needs to be a little bit more relevant to make it important to you. Maybe you might say something like finance committee notes. A little more specific. What else? Or how about this? Elevator out of service, January 12th and 13th. Now it's bad news, right? But what do you think? Should we put it right in the topic of the email?
Very clear.
Very clear. It's bad news, but it's not that bad.
Yeah.
And your audience may need to just have that information. Maybe they're planning to move January 12th. They're like, oh gosh. If you hadn't put it in the subject, I never would have known. I would have just opened it up. How about this one? No hot water in January.
January?
I guess so.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't know which days of January.
Okay, so we may be missing some information now.
In January means like 1 day of January or 4 days.
Okay. Okay. No?
I don't think that's a good title. I think something maybe in the line of service disruption or something like that would probably.
Or needed building enhancements. We're doing something positive. I just wanted to draw a difference between these two. They're both bad news. This top one is not that bad and you may just need the information. The second one could be really bad news and you need to be warmed up to it, no pun intended. you need to understand that a little bit more carefully before you get just smacked in the face with it. But
I'd just like to make a point. A lot of emails are ignored.
Yes,
so
they
something
are.
like hot water in January, like that, you do need people to read. So something like you mentioned service instruction, I think people would read it. So you still want to somehow convey that it's an important email to read. So
Yes.
that's like building enhancements, I would be like, oh, I don't care, whatever, do if you want to already.
yeah, think how annoyed this person who comes down to the front desk sopping wet January 2nd. Why is there no hot water? Like, well, we sent you an email. You didn't open it? Yeah. So, to Levy's
it's
point.
always touchy because like, subject lines really matter if people are going to open the email. So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
always take that into like a lot of consideration.
That's a great point.
I
Here.
think if it was that important, they just post it in the building somewhere so you might see it.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't be like,
Yeah.
where's my hot water?
Yeah. So maybe you could warm them up with an email, building enhancements in January in the body of, but to Les' point, try to make it a little more enticing so they actually open it, and in the body of the email explain why there's going to be no hot water in January, and then a few days or a few weeks later actually post, unfortunately, no hot water in January. Okay. All right, what else we've got here? So corporate change memo, you're going to think about a subject line, you're going to think about accomplishing the business need with this memo, and you're going to think about being sensitive to the audience because this is important for this particular assignment, which I'll read in a minute after I answer 2 questions. Vanessa?
Okay, this is actually about the subject line.
Yeah.
What if you're sending an email to which you need a response and it's like it's time sensitive? How do you feel? Any suggestions? Like I tend to say response needed. I don't know if that comes across like trying to press the person or does it get the point across?
I like time sensitive.
Okay.
Time sensitive, response needed. Yeah. Anyone else have any preferred techniques?
You have those importance on the email, like maybe it's important to have a red flag on. Or
Yeah, but some people tend to ignore it. At least the company that I worked in last year, like, oh yeah, but if you put like needed by 5 p.m. on this date, it tends to get a response. But I just wondered if it like comes across, a little abrasive or anything.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you don't send every single email with response needed or time sensitive.
No, of course
And
not.
so they see this one, time sensitive or action required. You might even put signature needed, report needed, so they know exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Other questions, Henry?
Is there a difference between an announcement and a memo?
An announcement and a memo. All right, so a memo is a traditional type of communication. An announcement, what is an announcement actually? Like company announcement? I guess you would make an announcement to your company employees through a memo.
Okay.
You might make an announcement over the PA system, could be another type of announcement. I would say, in answer to your question, a memo is typically a type of announcement. But an announcement's not a key term that you need to know, because I don't think there's a really clear definition of it. All right, so let me read you the description of the corporate change memo, see if you have any questions, and then we'll go on break. So, this is the memo. You will use these techniques to write to a bunch of employees who are going through transition. The scenario is this. You are a senior manager for Bank First, a large retail bank based in New York City. Your company, Bank First, has just acquired Minia Bank, a medium-sized bank headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Minia Bank has 20 retail branches around Minneapolis and almost 800 employees. The acquisition was very important for Bank First because Bank First wants to gain a foothold in the Midwest in order to diversify its customer base. You will be in charge of transitioning Minia Bank into fully incorporated branches of Bank First. It is of paramount importance that the transition goes smoothly in the eyes of the Minneapolis customers, because if the customer bank base shrinks as a result of the change, the Bank First investors will have serious doubts about the company's ability to expand. Now, during the transition, you know that roughly 20% of the frontline bank tellers, loan officers, and other customer service personnel will lose their jobs. And an additional roughly 80% of senior managers and the staff at headquarters will lose their jobs. So you're the big New York bank. You've just acquired the medium-sized bank in Minneapolis. It has almost 800 employees. There's going to be a transition that's very important for your business need. But during this transition, 20% of the frontline folks will lose their jobs. 80% of the senior managers and the staff at headquarters will lose their jobs. So if you turn over to the next page, you'll see your task is to write a memo to all Bank employees that will calm the employees and help the transition go smoothly. Because you want to gain the trust of the employees who will remain, you want to be as honest as possible in the memo. So what kind of strategies are you going to use? What of the techniques we went over would be most helpful for you in accomplishing this business need?
I think show understanding and explain why you're laying off people.
Yes, show understanding, explain the rationale, and maybe we could get a situation where they would say if they were in your shoes, they would know, they would do the same thing. Exactly.
Be compassionate and be able to recognize their accomplishments that they made in the corporation, and when the corporation goes back, right, that if the corporation goes back to normal or something, you're the first people who will.
Yes, and you can make up stuff like that. You can say, all right, when the corporation goes back to normal, we're going to be the first to hire you back.
Yeah.
You can make up a whole office of people who are going to be there to help you. You can think about how you might transition them into other roles. You can add those details, just as long as they seem consistent and they accomplish your goal of being clear. Now, some people don't actually say the 20% or the 80%. Some people will say some difficult decisions are ahead, and you're going to have to read over that carefully and say, does this accomplish my goal of calming the Bank employees and helping the transition go smoothly? Because if you write something that's so vague, once people start getting laid off, there's going to be a panic and a riot, then that's a problem. And I'll say, all right, your email was very sensitive, it was very nice, but what happens once you start have people laying off? People who get laid off, people who remain behind are going to say, this new company wasn't honest, they weren't upfront with us. Or you're going to have everybody in your office coming to you and asking for more information because you said, all right, some things are happening, just come to me if you have more information.
You can say there will be some laid off, you just don't have to say 2080.
That's a good strategy. Think about the best way you can do it that's going to be honest and accomplish your goal of keeping the employees calm and helping the transition go smoothly.
So if we decide to directly state, because I've seen it where they state the number of employees getting laid off. And I'm not sure if that's the best way to do it, just directly state.
I would agree that could be a dangerous strategy. Saying there are so there's 800 employees, you could do some numbers there. You could say roughly, I don't know, you don't know how many are staff and how many, you could just guess. You could say we're going to lay off 100 frontline, 100 staff employees and 50 frontline employees. You could. I don't know if that's kind of a scary proposition.
So are you suggesting we just massage it kind of?
Yeah, massage it. Be as clear as you can in a way that gives employees enough information so that they know what's going on. It's your chance to set the tone. Often a piece of feedback I will give students is you had an opportunity to set the tone and make sure everyone was on the same page, but you wasted that opportunity by just writing an email or a memo that didn't say anything. So you, the manager, can make this formal announcement that everyone's going to read, everyone's going to listen to, and it's going to be their first sense of who you are as a company. And are they going to trust you? Are they going to tell their Minneapolis customers, these folks are scary, you don't want to bank with them?
Can we build some criteria to how to lay off people and let them know, let them assess themselves in advance?
Yeah, so explain how the process is going to work.
The criteria like
Okay.
requirements.
Yeah, I think that's great.
What kind of people we may retain and what kind of people we may lay off.
Yeah. Yeah, if you can present a clear structure of what's going to happen in a way that doesn't scare everyone, they may take a deep breath and say, wow, there's going to be some stressful times, but at least I know where I stand. At least I know how this process is going to work. I think that's a great strategy. Great.
Who are we addressing this to? All
What's that?
employees?
Beatrice? What?
Who do we send this memo to?
Oh yeah, it's to, your task is to, in a memo to all many bank employees.
So just the one that you are acquiring?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, not to the old one that you work for?
Yes. Okay, other comments, other questions on this? All right, great. Let's take 10 minutes, come back at 3:52, correction, 2:52, and we'll discuss the Dell case.
I had already submitted the PowerPoint presentation.
Cool.
And I actually was late because I had a meeting that I told you about.
Yes.
Yeah.
No problem. Hope it went well.
Yeah. We are just talking about internships and
Excellent.
and I'm prepared.
Yes. I'm just going to take a picture of it.
If you didn't assign me the 7 hours of the book, I am?
Because you were late when we
Oh, this way, like, you already assigned some, assignment as well. Really? Oh, thank you. I don't even know myself.
You really haven't asked me. I think it's.
I'll ask him later. Actually, full time. Do you want to do the mountain thing?
Yes.
You did? You passed it? How can you do that?
You don't have a problem. Based on your presentation.
No. Oh, okay. I just had it. That was awful. No, I didn't do the research. Like I didn't went through the workshop because that was a flex, I was in a flex program.
Just give you the,
Yeah, you did give out some modifiers through the day. It was very inefficient because I really, frankly, just came in there without knowing when I'm going to be.
I think you have to prepare for an audit. And then you have to,
How do you say your first name again? Yang? Yes. How do you spell it? Y-A-N-G? Yeah. Thank you.
Personality page. I something really real. And it's like really my real reason because I was he didn't do generic, so it was for it's a interview I didn't pass, which I did really well. And he asked me why Novartis. I told him, oh, I have some personal experience to share. You know, I know Novartis has this drug on the market. I know the name of the drug. It's the only drug in the market that does not contain hormones. All the other types has hormones, and it's the only thing that my grandma can use in the market. And you know, just talk about the constant innovations Novartis has. I was surprised, you know, but the product they have, and also close family relative was benefited from the product. So that's my reason. He wants to, yeah, I know.
It's all what you want from the waters and what would you be able to bring to this
Yeah,
job.
he went on to a total different direction. He wanted me to do some research for the company. For instance, about the stock, financial status.
You design it.
No, I didn't do anything.
But are you applying for finance position?
No. No.
Well, I think the stock price may be just a general.
Remember he showed me a piece of paper with the Campbell pen?
Yeah.
You got that too, right?
The guy
I think it's a,
growing or down like that.
yeah, I think it's more like a sample letter. Where I look at it, you know, I just went over that. I know it's completely different from what I just saw.
I think what you were kind of personal experience was you probably the one who has to show that it's not just medicine but also what is a whole
Right,
and
right.
you have this personal connection with the one.
Right. That will highlight it, but that will not be the main reason.
Right. And then after all this, you have to also prepare a couple questions to ask.
Can I schedule time with you for looking you before I go see you? I scheduled the next time. Are you free for spring break? Are you going away? On campus?
The one is right next to me. The faculty is right next to my house.
Yeah, I've been there on company visit. I got a ticket.
Because it's fun.
Yeah, the parking. Okay. Maybe after after the midterm, because I know midterms are coming on the 3rd and the 8th subsequently. So I'll put some time.
I looked at it, I read it, but I haven't need to like.
It's your number. Your
email address, yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, I'll check your email.
Are you going to know what?
Sure, because I really like the company.
Format in terms of the progression to everything, but then you'll like maybe three or four paragraphs divided into that structure.
Really, this is right there. Where did you read about it? I'm like, I kind of need to know how you read
They
it
have
before I like
on-campus
submit another
daycare.
But you put the date.
Yeah, somehow I didn't, you know, I don't know. It's just
I thought they have their own zip code.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Some teachers are dealing with them like directly and you can tell like.
So close.
And she's like, I don't know.
You know,
It's like, yeah, I get done, I don't do it. She was.
You do need to know what is. I think you don't know what is your best option.
Late though, but I guess this wasn't your color.
They had green tea.
No. Yeah. 4 minutes. 4 minutes too late.
But I'm sure they have a lot of ideas.
I really like how
How is
like
it?
the corporation and working here.
No, I mean like.
It's lovely. It's a lovely place. I really like. It's such a shame.
I should have said 4 minutes ago.
I was actually telling the truth, you know? I was telling her, this is the actual She was like, don't be naive.
yeah.
He was looking at me. So awkward then.
That would have been funny if you would say
Yeah.
I like her as a person.
I think you were saying that
That's
they
like
put
the
you like right
practically
after
every day when I was on campus. And
Are you like Do we know majorly supply chain management?
I can see. Yeah.
Well, I have the,
It'll be a back and forth.
the kind of, oh, the question is actually not
Yeah, so
just
you'll be
like,
in Los Angeles.
Finance
that's how
and
professional
information.
representation.
You're the supply chain, right?
Yeah. Trying to accomplish these objectives based on,
How's that so far?
based on.
It's like now, like now.
You have a logistics business, right?
Sorry?
Your business is logistics.
Yeah.
So I work on the,
You're gonna
like
be
the
on,
social activity, but
trying to.
Because my base is in Hong Kong.
You know, they're trying to find ways to
Some
make
So
customers
what you did was try
help
to.
them to ship the products of United States to China.
Yeah, so thing was like, you said you have to prepare people like,
The
kind of style. So it's like, it's also like, when office people go like, not
Terrible. Yes.
Need some finance.
Um,
5 and 6.
your role. Yang, you're doing two, you signed up to do 2 things for the camera workshop next week.
Huh? Actually, I would do the, background music and I do one with the,
Yes. Do you want to do just one instead?
Sure.
Which one would you prefer?
you want to do the video?
Interview. Okay. So you'll do the annuity thing, and you'll work with Priya to do. Okay, and you'll work with Priya.
Okay.
You'll read her interview questions. You'll research her topic. You'll think of a question or two to make it interesting.
Okay. You're an interviewer.
Reporter. Yeah, reporter. Oprah Winfrey.
Okay.
Something like that.
You said you were going to be one pretend.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. I actually forgot my whole section on social media communications, and I'm behind, so I'm going to just fire through at a blistering pace. Not only do the social media, but oh boy. All right, so. Okay, so sorry about that. I forgot the whole section on social media communications. So you're going to get just a blistering lecture on social media, get some input from you. Then we're going to do the Dell case. Hope it's not too fast, but I wanted to discuss briefly some tools for text messaging, some tools for using social media and other messages, get some ideas from you at the same time. Now, I want to start off with this graph. This is a computer communication components graph. This is a very traditional graph that's been around maybe 100 years. And honestly, when I became a communications consultant, I never imagined I would be using this graph. This is just basic communication overview. Anytime you communicate something, a sender may send a message. There'll be some noise that may interfere with that message. The receiver will decode that message. The receiver will encode a response, send a feedback message, and there's some noise that may interrupt with the sender's reception of that message. This is all under the banner of context. This message is sent in context. Now, as I mentioned, I never thought I would be teaching with this very traditional graph, but as I was thinking about the ways for us to evaluate social media, evaluate text messages, I found relying on this was an effective tool. Because some things that go wrong with all communications, especially social media and text messages, can be broken down into these parts. The medium on which the message was chosen could be problematic. The way the message is encoded or decoded could be problematic. Or the context in which the message was created could also be problematic. So let's think about some of the advantages, disadvantages to not in-person communication. When we communicate with someone in person, we have various advantages, various things we can show them, various ways we can communicate with them. When we have a not in-person communication, like a letter, a memo, an email, a text messages, there's some disadvantages to that. I want to talk about what those might be, talk about how problems come up with the context, the coding, the medium choice. So, when we have not in-person communication, there are numerous advantages to that. All that stuff is efficient, all that stuff is going to help us. We're not going back to just talking verbally to people because of all the numerous advantages of all those things. What I want to focus on right now are some of the disadvantages to this not in-person communication. What are some of the disadvantages? Rick?
You can't communicate with body language, that's.
You can't see body language, visual cues, lack of nonverbal cues, lack of situational awareness. You can't tell that this person is really stressed out. You can't tell this person wants a response right away. Additional coding problems. So the way I choose to code that message could be problematic. How am I going to code it when I put in a text message? And how are you going to decode it when you receive that? You're not going to have all those extra cues to help you because it's not in-person communication. Now, I want to throw this idea out. That when you receive what you might call an inappropriate message, an inappropriate text message, an inappropriate Facebook post message, I want to throw out the idea that that message in and of itself is not inappropriate. What you might find inappropriate about it is that it's an inappropriate medium, it's inappropriate for the context, or it's inappropriately coded. Would you all agree with that? Inappropriate message means inappropriate medium, inappropriate coding, inappropriate context. Yes, please.
Could you clarify what you mean by coding?
Okay, good question. Thanks for asking me. I was trying to rush through this because I realized I forgot this point. So, if we go back, we can see, not that far back. Okay. I am the sender. I have a message to portray. You all are going to get fired. I like the work you're doing. Or I'm changing the syllabus. I'm going to encode that a certain way. I'm going to think about the words I want to use to say it. The way my receiver decodes that, when he says, or she receives that message and I say, I think you're doing great work, that receiver may decode that as to mean, Zach does not like me. Or the receiver may decode that message to mean, yes, I am really doing great work. Make sense? Okay. So, medium problems. All right. Medium is the message. We may be sending something over a medium that confuses our message. Let's think about a couple different mediums we might use for a basic message. Suppose we're going to tell someone, let's go to the happy hour tonight. A couple different mediums we might use. One would be an email. One might be a text message. One might be a LinkedIn message. One might be a Facebook message. Can you imagine how it would be a different type of message depending on which one we used? If we send a LinkedIn message, we're sending the message, this is a networking event. If we send a Facebook message, maybe we're sending the message, this is a social event. Text message, maybe we're sending the message that we want a response right away and that we're casual, we're friends. So medium is the message. Think about what we're saying by the medium that we choose. Coding problems. All right, Vanessa's question, how we code things. And when we're doing not in-person communication, we can code in a way that confuses our audience. We may have a coding difference. All right, I choose to code something one way, you choose to decode something another way. Maybe we just make a mistake. I make a mistake with the words I say, the language I use, the little letters, acronyms that I use, like LOL. I think it means one thing, it actually means something else. Coding over confidence. What I mean by this is that I am clear about the coding I choose. I know exactly what it means in my mind, and I think you know exactly what it means in your mind. And I'm very confident about that. But sometimes that confidence is not justified. So coding difference, maybe we have a different language understanding, maybe we evaluate the mediums differently. I think Facebook is something we should use all the time for everything. You think it's something you should use just for social interactions. Context assessment. Maybe you're nervous about losing your job, and so when I send an email over LinkedIn about you should probably go to this thing, you think it's like an urgent warning, when I think it's just information about a networking event. And the way we assess how the other party is going to interpret that message. Coding mistake, just errors, like I said. Go see some costly things. How many of you ever gotten really mad about a text message and realized that there was just a mistake that the sender made? I've experienced that. So you want to think carefully, especially those short, succinct messages that you might send by text, how a small mistake can upset your audience. And this overconfidence. We talked about, I think I'm confident about how I've coded it. You think you're confident about how you've received it. And I want to talk about a study with overconfidence. Before I do that, I want to introduce this idea of signal amplification bias, which essentially means, actually I won't say what it essentially means, I'll just read you the definition and we'll discuss it. Signal amplification bias. This is the tendency to overestimate how much one's behavior conveys internal states. So, if I'm angry about something, and I'm sending you various passive-aggressive messages that I'm angry, I think that's very clear to you from my point of view. If I send a sarcastically worded text message, I may think that that's very, very clear, because I'm the one sending it. But the person who receives it may not be clear on it. Maybe I send a message, maybe I wait 2 or 3 days before I respond to someone's text message. And I say, yeah, maybe we'll hang out sometime. And I think by saying maybe, I think by waiting 2 or 3 days, I'm clearly saying, let's not make it a priority. But the receiver may interpret that in a different way. I'll tell you about this study with this coding overconfidence concept. American Management Association, they did a study about emails and asked students to communicate things over emails, and this is how it worked. They said, students, please communicate a statement via email. For some of the statements, students were told to use a sarcastic tone. So they said, Sagnik, please communicate this thing over email and use a sarcastic tone. Priya, you communicate something, don't use a sarcastic tone. Recipients, the people who received that email, were asked is this an email that conveys a sarcastic tone, or is this a serious email? And the recipients correctly assessed whether it was sarcastic or not 56% of the time. The senders, the people who were sending it, anticipated that the receivers would accurately assess it 78% of the time. And recipients assessed their accuracy rate at 90%. So that's the person who sent it. I just mentioned earlier, sending a sarcastic email, Priya sending a not sarcastic email. They said, with 90% confidence, I'm correct. Like 90% of the people said, not I'm correct, but this is clear. Does that make sense? And the okay. So what does that mean? What do we take from this data? So recipients correctly assessed whether or not this was a sarcastic tone 56% of the time. And the senders anticipated that they would think it was, that they would correctly assess it 78% of the time. And the actual assessment of the recipients assessed their accuracy rate. Let me make it better. Recipients assessed their accuracy rate. Okay, so the recipients, okay, so the people who are receiving this email said, I understand whether or not it was sarcastic. Does that make sense? And it's not just they said with 90% accuracy, it was that 90% of them said, yes, I understand what the sender meant by this. All right, somebody help me out. I'm trying to rush through this. I'm not sure if I've clearly made my point. Let me.
Point is that people don't think the same way you think. So if you think you're sending a certain message, people don't necessarily receive that message.
Yes.
And they're the numbers. So you think, you're going to say, you think 78% of people will understand it, but really only 56% understood.
Yes. All right. Now this 50%, this is about the same as guessing, right? So guess whether or not it's sarcastic, you get 50% of them right. So just a hair above guessing was the receiver's ability to assess whether or not this message was sarcastic. But, to Levy's point, the senders and the receivers thought that they were either being clear with what they were sending or being clear with what they were understanding. So what do we take from this information? How do we adjust our messaging?
It just means that the sarcastic tone is literally undecipherable over the message.
Undesirable. What do you mean by undesirable?
Undecipherable.
Undecipherable, yes. Understand that you're going to need to be clearer than sending a sarcastic tone. And not just a sarcastic tone, all the nuances you send over email are likely to be not necessarily be clear. Okay, any other comments? Okay, so I had some examples of social media communications that had been labeled perhaps as inappropriate messages. But remember, we said inappropriate messages are not necessarily inappropriate in and of themselves. They're inappropriate because of some coding problems, because of some medium choices, or some context assessment. So let's look at these. Some of them will help us with that, some of them are just for fun. Let's read this. So this is from, all right, this is from someone's boss. This is the boss text. This is the person whose phone it is responding. And this is what the boss says. So the boss says, someone at the conference just said that our company might get bought out by Cybex. What do you think? You respond, I'm not sure what to think. Should we touch base with legal or start a combination analysis? Boss says, maybe not all that, but it gives us something to think about. I have to get back to the conference. They're moving us to a different room. Talk soon. How might that message get confused, either because of the medium chosen, coding chosen, or the context?
It seems like the boss doesn't want to answer the question or is trying to like brush it off.
Okay, but the boss is the one who brought it up, right?
Yeah.
The boss is saying someone just said we might get bought out, and then tries to brush it off.
I think the conversation between the receiver receiver and the sender is at two different levels.
Okay.
The receiver is trying to decode too much out of what the boss is trying to say. So he's trying to take it, or she's trying to take it to the next level, like legal, and all that. While the boss is just probably sending out like whatever he heard. He just wants to share.
Yes, I think that's a very fair interpretation of this, that the boss is just trying to share, but for some reason the recipient is taking this at a more extreme level than perhaps the boss is intending. Why is the recipient taking it at a more extreme level?
He's insecure.
What's that?
He's insecure about his child property.
Okay, this person may be insecure. What about the medium might provoke this type of response? Like the text message.
It's informal.
Okay, text message could mean informal. Text message also might mean something else. Josh?
Well, it could be like really urgent, like, you know, he just started
Urgency.
texting you the second he heard this at the conference or whatever, you know, he needs a response of some kind.
Yeah, that's what I noticed about this one. That the medium could indicate urgency when it's not necessarily supposed to indicate urgency. Okay, this is a fun one. This is from Mom. Your great aunt just passed away, LOL. You say, why is that funny? Mom says, it's not funny, David. What do you mean? You say, Mom, LOL means laughing out loud. Mom says, oh my goodness, I just sent that to everyone. I thought it meant lots of love. I'll have to call everyone back. So mistake, a coding mistake that could be very embarrassing. All right, and this is my favorite one. This is more just for fun, but we can talk about some coding examples. All right, Sarah is the person texting this person. So Sarah says, hey. This person says, hey, we need to talk. Sarah says, yeah. You say, look, our relationship is like doing push-ups on your knees. It's just not working out. Sarah says, oh my God, did you just break up with me? Yes, you just broke up with Sarah. Now, how did you code that message? You didn't use it's not a metaphor. At first I thought it was a metaphor. It's a pun. It's a pun. Push up on your knees. It's not working out. And then I take working out to mean our relationship isn't jiving together. So I thought it was interesting from the way this person chose to code that message. Could definitely be offensive. Kind of funny. But could definitely could definitely upset the receiver.
I think the problem is the medium, more than coding.
Yes. So being broken up with over text message is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So not only choosing a medium, informal like text messaging, but using a pun. A pun to break up with someone. Alright. Let's talk a little bit about some social media tweets. I don't know if you all remember
Yeah.
2-3, oh, you remember this?
Yeah.
2-3 years ago, NYPD said we want to enhance our image with the community. We want to show that we're cool with social media. We want to start this hashtag on Twitter, MyNYPD, and we want a bunch of people to send in photos of them having good community interactions with the NYPD. And I thought like, oh, Twitter is the way to go. Twitter is the way to reach the community. And so they said, please send in photos. And what happened, Levy?
I think there was a hashtag #NotMyNYPD where people were kind of tweeting negative things about the.
Well, no, that's the beauty of it. They kept it the same. They
Oh.
used the same hashtag.
Okay.
But they used the same hashtag, but they didn't send in nice photos. They sent in photos like this. Alright, they sent in photos like this. Alright, or very bad interactions. So this is an example. The NYPD thought they could control Twitter. They thought they could control a hashtag. And they thought they could use it for a self-serving purpose. And it ended up backfiring. Let me explain one more social media misfire, and then see if you have any comments on that before we move on. You may remember remember a couple years ago when the Ray Rice thing happened, where there's a video footage of this football player, Ray Rice, punching his then fiance, then girlfriend, and the relationship continued. I think they're now married. And there was a big discussion about how domestic violence in the NFL should be treated, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the hashtags that developed was stories from people who had been abused in a domestic situation, explained why they stayed. And it was a hashtag why I stayed. And there were all sorts of very heartfelt stories and information about this is how an abuse sort of cycle can work. And there was all this discussion. DiGiorno Pizza noticed that this is a trending hashtag. So DiGiorno Pizza decides we should use that trending hashtag and say, hashtag why I stayed, you had a pizza. So they thought, this is trending, let's jump on the trending, and let's say pizza is a good reason to stay. And then they had all sorts of backlash. You should not be trying to sell pizza in this very heartfelt, very emotional topic. All right, so any thoughts on those two? I know I rushed through them quickly. Any thoughts on those last two, the DiGiorno or the My NYPD? What should the company have done a little bit differently? Yes.
I think this one is just really inappropriate in a sense. Like,
Yeah.
why I say like Jesus. I don't know who is, the broadcasting person for
Yeah,
this
well,
company.
it seems apparent all they knew was trending hashtag.
Yeah, you definitely got
This-
broadcasting, but not a good one.
Yeah, well, so that's all they knew about Twitter, is that trending hashtags are something that gets noticed, so let's get noticed. I think that's the main takeaway for that one. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about a company that did a better job managing social media. It's Dell Communications. All right. So let's do it this way. So let's go over some basics of. Let me get this off. Let's start over here. Maybe this will disappear momentarily. All right, let's talk about Dell Computers. What do we know about this company, Dell Computers? Just some basics. We'll start with when did it start? What are they known for? What might be happening with this company in the last few years? Jerry.
So they started in 1984 when Michael Dell, he was like, I think it was in college. He started building computers in his garage.
In his dorm room,
Dorm room,
right?
yeah.
You're thinking of Steve Jobs building them in his garage.
Yeah.
Michael Dell in his dorm room, yes. All right, so tell me more.
And their business model was the build to order business model where earlier it was like phoning, but later it was online. You would just define, say you want this, that for like the hard drive or how much hard space you want or like processor, and then they build for you and then they send it to you.
Yeah, okay,
And then-
so custom built to order.
Because
All right.
that was like revolutionary during that time, and later because of changes, they also had to build pre-built computers for like Walmart and Best Buy.
Oh, Dell did? They pre-built for large custom order,
Yeah,
for large
They did that
commercial
too,
orders?
like later, like more recently because of the changes in like the industry.
Okay, great, all right. So what's been going on lately with this company? Are any major bullet points in terms of things that happened in the important history of Dell that we need to know about? Vanessa?
They went from being a public company to private again.
Yes. So they were public to private. Private, excellent. Natalie? Or Josh, sorry?
I guess part of the public to private was a reaction to going from the leader in computer sales to continually dropping down the list.
Yeah, tell me about this dropping down the list.
I guess part of the problem started when Michael Dell he had a power shift where he was only chairman of the board of directors, I guess, instead of also being CEO, and the people who replaced him made a series of competition, but I think some of the competition changed at that time also.
Okay, so the drop in sales, possibly because of the lack of leadership after Michael Dell leaves, possibly just some things that were going on in the industry. Second?
One of the interesting things of Dell is they never manufactured anything.
Right, and then they're an aggregator, right? We'll call them?
Yeah, so they had all contractors manufacturing as well as the assembly.
All right, fantastic. So aggregator, drop in sales. Now, I'm not an expert in the computer industry, but I think Apple computers illustrate something very important about cornering that computer market. When Steve Jobs started building computers in his garage, and they were the first PC, everyone bought Apple, and then Apple declined in sales, and that left room for companies like Dell and others to expand in the PC market. And so after the initial computers are invented, Apple's the only one who knows how to make computers, there was this big space in the market where Dell could step into and do build to order, aggregate stuff, and they were very, very successful that way. I think they were number one in certain years, but then they dropped after Michael Dell left. But then, when Apple came back, and everyone had a Mac computer, I guess we've got a few Mac computers in here. Do we have a majority of Mac computers in here? Maybe half and half.
Yeah, but this doesn't portray the general, I don't think.
Yes, okay. So, what sort of strategy did Dell shift to in the more recent years? Yes.
Well, like a service provider,
Service provider, solution provider, and yes. What else? Are they more business to consumer? Or are they more
they're
more business to business? So they're going through this privatization process. They're transferring from a B to C to more of a business to business, right? Because they're being pushed out, possibly from Apple, possibly from Lenovo, other companies that can make a personal computer less expensive fashion than they can. All right, so then let's ask this next question, all right? Were they successful in their, why is this not turning off? Were they successful in their social media strategy? Have they been successful in their social media strategy?
Yes.
Yes. All right, what is some of the social media infrastructure that Dell has? Vanessa?
They said the employees that are interested in engaging directly with consumers go through somewhat of a certification process that allows them to answer questions or create forums to go back and forth with random people, I guess, Dell consumers about their product.
Yes. Okay, so what's the certification process called, Vanessa?
Yeah.
SMAC-U. All right.
Social media.
Social Media and Communications University. So they go through a process where they can be certified to speak on behalf of Dell. And then they interact with customers online, some of which are their friends and family, some of which are just people that they are communicating with because that's their area of expertise. All right, so they've got SMAC-U. What's some of the other social media infrastructure? They've got SMAC-U. They've also got the social media and communications team, where they aggregated everything into one department. They whittled down hundreds of Facebook pages, Twitter pages, yada yada, and put it all into one. What else have they got? Social media communications, SMAC-U.
I think there was another important thing that they mentioned was the employees were sort of, it was mandatory for them to say in their tweets or Facebook comments that they made that I work for Dell.
Yes.
So that to emphasize that it's a credible information coming from the company.
Yes, yes. We'll talk a lot more about that in a moment. But just social media infrastructure. Josh.
I guess they started a website idea store where
Yep.
they took submissions from customers and allowed them to vote on the quality of those ideas, gave birth to some of the things that they eventually offered in their computers and services.
Okay, so it's some of the things they offered in their computer services. but it's also a forum where they can discuss and determine what are the specifications of this. And yeah, this is actual ideas, right? The idea storms is what would you like to see in these products? And there's a couple examples of things that the company took from their suggestions. So idea storm, smack, what else? Yeah?
Chatter, that's their internal platform.
Chatter, tell me about that.
I think it's their internal platform that more than 10,000 employees using Chatter, that they can communicate with each other online, public or privately.
Okay, so it's communication between employees.
Right.
All right. And that, okay, good.
So Dell also, the listening part, Dell actively quoted influential online commentators, including journalists and bloggers, to try to move them from a general awareness of Dell to loyalty or even advocacy for the brand.
Okay,
So-
sorry, sum that up for me.
So basically, they had a system in which the Dell Smack people, they could listen to what the customers and everything.
Yeah. So this is the social media and communications command center. Is that what it was? Is that what they called it? Yes. Levy, did you have something else?
Yeah, they created a SME scorecard where employees could kind of review how well they're doing on the social media scene and the impact that they're having.
Yes, excellent. All right, so scorecard. Anyone want to talk a little bit more about that? Monitor how they're doing? This Levy pretty much summed it up. All right, the scorecard to actually monitor how they're doing, monitor what's going on in social media. And what else do we have? We're missing just a couple.
Well, I think they have a presence on all the major social media channels like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. Strong social media presence on all the major ones. All right, presence, and then there's right, so we've got Idea Storm, and then there's Tech
Tech page one.
Yes. And tell us about Tech Page One.
It's curated technology-related content from around the internet and basically a small amount.
Small amount of what?
Amount of Dell-created content.
Okay, so they've got a small amount of Dell-created content, but more importantly than that, it's a curator of various computer industry type things. And that's how they were building credibility, by saying, this is not just to sell our stuff, this is a bunch of cool stuff that you need to know as a computer consumer, and we'll think about how Dell products fit into that. All right, so we've got Idea Storm, Tech Page One. I feel like we're missing one more. Direct to Dell. Remember, tell me about Direct to Dell. What's that?
Is that people calling them and then they were sort of trying to?
Well, it's not people calling them. It's a blog or some sort of vehicle to get questions answered.
Answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a blog and it's there's some technical based information and it facilitates interaction between users and
Okay. And to your point, or maybe you were going to make this point, that it decreased the number of calls coming to Dell. Okay, so that's a little bit that's going on with the company. There's a little bit about their social media infrastructure. Let me ask you this question. How do we know that they have been successful with their social media strategy?
It's LTS.
Sales have gone up. Have they? And then
Yeah, they talk about like Twitter, so they talk about.
sales from Twitter. Okay, so we've got some direct sales that we can link to tweets. I think that part was mentioned. Natalie?
You have customers making statements like other competitors aren't doing this.
Yes. Okay, Fran?
And also the NPS score.
The what?
NPS score.
NPS score. I forgot what is that?
That
NPS
is the
score.
Net Promoter Score.
Net Promoter Score.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about that, Fran.
Okay. After the Dell launched the social media, modifications, that Dell's NPS scores has risen dramatically, over 50%
Okay,
in
so-
3 years.
So an important metric, and that has gone up. So we've got some evidence that their social media strategy has been effective. Question I have for you all is why? Why has this social media strategy been effective? Well, let's think about this in terms of the company you might build, the company you might work for, sort of what in their culture, what in their strategy, what in their execution has made them successful. Now let me break that down into those 3 points and then I'll get you your answers. So success, 3 parts. I want to know what culture, strategy, and execution. Okay. Culture, strategy. What do you got?
Because they use the training, so it got everybody on the same page on what to do, what not to do.
Okay, so smack you training.
What they got in the strategy?
You training. I suppose it could. I like execution. What would be their strategy levy that would require them executing a consistent across the board training?
Need to be consistent.
Need to be consistent. Need to have
One voice.
one voice. Yeah. So one voice. One voice. All right. What else? Yeah.
I think talking about culture, we're doing a lot of their sales are done online, so they're being active online for a long time. They're being comfortable with internet. So it makes it easier to, a lot of sales are down through Dell.com. So they're comfortable to operate.
Yes. So their comfort with the internet. All right. It may be just because the company's been on the internet for a while. It may also be because of their founder, Michael Dell, who started with blogs in the late 80s from his dorm room. Priya.
One strategy was that they wanted to be the voice of their customers in terms of whenever they had an issue that they were not happy with Dell, and there were certain actually examples in the case. They converted them from being, the unhappy customer to being an advocate for the company.
Yes. Okay. So they want to hear customers. And I think the case uses the term ranters.
Yeah.
And they want to hear them and convert them. And what about the positive, ravers?
Ravers, yeah.
All right. So they want to hear both of them. And we want to give the ravers, the people who like our product, we want to give them a platform. So let's create all this stuff where they have a platform to say how awesome Dell is. And let's get our employees involved with one voice and customer training or social media training so that you can be part of that voice as well. And let's come back to your point that hashtag I work for Dell. How is that going to fit into their success? Just let us know if it would fit in necessarily into one of those 3 categories, but you can just talk generally about it. Because you mentioned credibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a matter of credibility to me. I mean, if I know that it's coming from an employee of Dell who is trained towards their job and is knowledgeable about what they're doing, I would, as a customer, tend to believe more in. I probably would stand a better chance of being converted and closing a sale and converted to a loyal customer.
Yes, all right. So it speaks to credibility. And this whole idea with one voice and managing the social media dialogue, now they made some choices, I would say, that the NYPD, when they tried their Twitter campaign, didn't make. The NYPD, with their Twitter campaign, said we want to manage that discussion, but they didn't know how to manage that discussion. They didn't have a respect for what happens in Twitter and what happens on social media. Dell understood that to an extent they can't control everything, but we're going to do our best to manage it under these guidelines. Vanessa.
I actually thought the I work for Dell hashtag fell under culture because the way that I interpreted it was they were trying to be transparent about the fact that they're coming from a different perspective. So I thought it was honest where I get my paycheck, so I have a reason to tell you things, but, you can engage with me because I'm gonna tell you the best that I know.
Yes, fantastic. Excellent point, Levy.
Well, going on that point, I would say if somebody said I work for Dell, I would actually tend to leave them a bit less as opposed to some independent blogger. But I work for Dell would definitely give me respect for the Dell company that they're trying to be out there to engage.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Levy. So you would have a level of you might be skeptical, but you would have a level of respect for them. And Vanessa mentioned something about sometimes companies pay random bloggers to say cool things about them. I would say that if Dell makes a point of make sure every employee hashtag I work for Dell, you would be less skeptical that someone is doing that. So if it's a true rant or raver about the product or service, then you would believe them. You say, oh, Dell makes a point. They send everyone to social media communications training, and if they work for Dell, they would say hashtag I work for Dell. Then,
To add on to culture, I think there's a culture of like trust that they're giving the employees, giving them autonomy to you know, if they're engaging on this medium that potentially be quite disruptive. So they do have the level of trust that they're giving them.
okay, so they have trust, they let them speak, and they also, this company lets employees work on Facebook, work on social media during work hours. They actually encourage that. What do you all think? If you were the CEO of a company, would you say, put on Facebook as much as you want? Do you think that's a good strategy, a dangerous strategy?
Well, previously they didn't allow using the social media for which the sales fell down when there was the previous CEO after Michael Dell left and became the chairman of the board. So the social media thing came over and actually increased sales. So if you let people use Facebook during work, they might actually be Facebooking about the social media contents.
Yes.
And that can actually improve. It is being proven that is improving sales, and now there is actually the
So all right, so let me jump in. So it worked for Dell.
yeah.
All right, would you say it would work for any company?
It depends. I will say if they have a strategy, then
Yeah. Yes, Josh, you have something to add?
Well, just that I think on a level, especially in a tech company where there's a lot of use of these kind of things anyway, and I think many companies experience people using it, saying that you embrace it and at least try to frame it on your own terms is less fighting upstream and, against the currents of time, where it's so easy to do on your phone or on your computer or whatever. Acknowledging that this is what my employees do and making it work for you is a lot different than trying to ban it and having what are you going to hire extra managers to walk around behind people and make sure they're doing it?
Exactly. All right, you can't stop the tide from coming in to the beach. It's coming anyway. Let's think about a way to manage it, and to Sagney's point, let's have a strategy. And then, let's say, go ahead and use it. Let's do it that way. All right, any other success factors here? Buddy, yeah?
Yeah, the scorecard, I think, is more than a success. People want to, people want, what's the word? They want feedback on how they're doing. So if somebody feels that they're making an impact, it gives them more incentive to communicate more. If they feel that they're not doing anything, then they feel like, why am I doing this?
Oh, so the Dell employees are
Well, the
getting that
Dell employees
feedback.
themselves, yeah.
Yeah, so they're seeing that my efforts on social media have made a difference, right? That's good feedback. Let me ask you this. Jerry mentioned earlier this history of a build-to-order company. And I remember actually talking to Dell in 2000, 2001, and having them design a build-to-order computer for me. I didn't end up buying it. I think I got something at, I forget where it was. But I talked to the Dell representatives and had this build-to-order idea. How does having history in build-to-order, might that affect their social media success? Specifically, how might that contribute to their culture?
say that they would be more innovative because build to order was more innovative at that time. So since they're trying to see themselves as an innovative company, then I think this social media is like fits into the.
Okay, so innovative, all right, they're a type of innovative company. There's something else that I think is really big with this. Priya?
Cross-functional. So they have to be really cross-functionally.
Okay, so the person on the phone needs to understand printers, needs to
Right.
understand us.
And
Perhaps.
also communicate to people who are building it with all the specifications and things like that. So they have to be cross-functionally.
Okay, okay, all right, sure, fair point. There's something else pretty big I'm looking for. That,
We say urgency,
Uh,
sense of quick responses.
yeah, I go with you. I think these are all great ideas. I want one more though, Yang?
I want to build to order, make you understand the customer better, and that's something they come back to.
Yes, they're a company that has always been built in understanding the customer. All right, we want something that satisfies you and uniquely you. So when they started getting into social media, they had that in their cultural DNA, that we want to hear directly from the customers. We always have. We did it when there was phone lines. Now we're going to do it when there's social media. We're going to go direct to customer. That's our history. Direct to customer. And I think this is interesting that I mentioned earlier that it may not work for every company to let their employees use Facebook all day, but it worked for Dell because they had this infrastructure. And this is something that let's discuss for a minute in the 6 minutes that we have left. Should every company do this kind of social media strategy? And how does this history of being a customer-oriented company help them? Yeah?
I think if you're providing service to a customer, you're serving clients, then I think it could suit you. For, in the case of Dell, it's definitely suitable. But there are some industries or some other companies that they're not supposed to, allow this type of, practice. For instance, what if it's a, top research, organization? Some of the information are confidential. Even emailing, using a personal email in a corporate setting is prohibited because
Right.
they're afraid to transfer
Right.
the information out. And
Right.
even you are only allowed to, do your work on a company computer, and you can
Yeah,
take it.
this would
home.
not be a great strategy for the Department of State.
Right. I don't think it's for everyone, but it works for them.
Yeah, and this is one of the main reasons why it works, or one of the important reasons why it works. So I think it's important to think about, yes, it worked, but only because of certain infrastructure and certain culture. And let's think about what that means for a broader assessment of other companies. Okay, so I want to start to close with this assessment of the power of social media. There's a statistic in the case that says leads on social media are 2 to 5 times more likely to close than traditional leads. Let me ask you, why are leads on social media 2 to 5 times more likely to close? Some of it will be stuff we've already discussed, but let's just sum it up that way. Why social media leads more likely to close? And feel free to say stuff that we've already mentioned. But that's powerful concept I want to end with. Social media 2 to 5 times more likely to close. Let's aggregate it all together and ask ourselves why not.
Bad coding.
Bad. Okay, tell me more. Thanks for using the term coding, but tell me more.
If you're trying to deliver a message that's not received well.
Oh, close. You know what close means, right? Close means like the sale was closed.
Oh, I didn't hear that, okay.
Yeah. So closed means that the sale will be completed. So if I get a lead from a source on social media, from TechPage One, Direct to Dell, or Idea Storm, and that person is interfacing with one of my employees who's telling he or she about the company, and that person says, hey, you should think about buying this for your company, you should think about buying this for yourself, that lead is much more likely to result in a sale. close. Yeah, close is good. So why? Why is that?
I can think of two things. One is time efficient, and the other thing is you're able to cater to your customers' needs directly, instead of,
Faster, direct to customer.
right.
Outstanding, yes. What? Let.
Well, what you just said makes it quite clear, but has another one in terms of what you really from a personal, from a family or from a friend, and obviously you would take the recommendation seriously. But also,
Let me stop you there before we go to the second point. So, how many people is Dell certified to speak on their behalf? Does anyone remember? 170,000, is that right? I think there's 117,000 total and like 10% of employees, about 17,000. Is that right?
Yeah.
So they have a lot of friends and family. All right, and to your point, so we hear from someone directly from those friends and family. That's powerful. And your second point?
my second point is social media is much more directed at interested consumers. So typically your marketing would be whatever it was, billboards or magazine ads or stuff like that. It wasn't personalized. Now social media, or before advertising became very big on social media, but beginning of social media stage, where people chose what mediums they want to follow and what interactions they want to have. So anybody who had interaction from Dell was probably more by choice than just noise and
Yes, okay, so you're right. You've been engaging in a customer interaction by choice, rather than having a billboard forced at you or a banner ad thrown at you. Good, Josh.
Well, to build on that, they're kind of trading on the credibility they've generated in that marketplace online.
Okay, so they've built up some credibility, possibly because they've been there a while, possibly because they're using the I work for Dell hashtag, and because they're reaching out to their friends and family, and they're connecting friends and family, even if they don't work for Dell. You can use these platforms to hear from your friends, even though, like I said, they may not work for Dell, but they could say, yeah, I bought that, and it worked well. All right, let's spend 60 seconds talking about how Dell is going to transition from a business that sells primarily to customers to now a business who wants to sell primarily to other businesses. How can they do that effectively? Now your answer does not have to be use social media. It can be use social media, but it does not have to be use social media.
Can you repeat the last part?
How can Dell transfer from a company that sells primarily to customers to now a company that wants to sell primarily to businesses? How can they make that transition as effective as possible? Priya.
With the new relationship,
With,
long-term relationship with the businesses.
okay, and all right, is social media going to fit into that?
No,
Okay.
to some extent, yeah.
I think before they turned from public to private, Dell did not take money from Wall Street, and instead he took money from Microsoft and Bill Gates, because he didn't want to give he didn't want to show quarterly results, because that's not long term. So if you are getting money from Microsoft, you can start building a relationship that we might not be able to pay you the money, but we will give you this computer so that you install your Microsoft in between, and that's the way you can start.
Oh, okay, so they actually developed a relationship with Microsoft.
Yeah, not Microsoft, but Bill Gates.
With Bill Gates
He
because of
owns
that?
Microsoft part of it. So
Okay, good, excellent points. The thought that the case I think leaves us with is that selling directly to businesses is a larger proposition. It's a very higher end sale, that fewer transactions are going to be much more meaningful, and to build the credibility with social media seems to be helping Dell. So we have credibility, we have a vehicle. Look how many of your employees already use Dell. Look how we can service their questions or their needs over this social media. And look at these other companies that are saying great things about us on social media. So if you make this huge purchase, say you buy computers for every single classroom in Rutgers Business School, that's a big deal. And you want to think very carefully about that in social media. It seems, according to the authors of the case, was an effective way to build that credibility. All right, so sorry for rushing through everything, keeping you a minute But that is it for today. I look forward to next week, which is our exciting on-camera workshop. And if you have any questions as you prepare for that, feel free to email me, or you can ask me after class now, maybe any questions about the interview you're constructing or anything of that nature. Is there a question? Yeah, use your computer, use your laptop, so you can have a big screen.
Oh, you'll be my interviewer?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay, sure. And how do you say your first name, Jana? Okay, if there is anything, any question, just let me know.
Can I have your email or your phone?
Yes, so you'll be on Skype. Yeah, what I'm doing is go.
I'll send you a text.
One person
Try my best. Make it sound reasonable. Sounds good. That's, I mean, the real guy deserves it. I don't know if I do.
No one really died while they were there. Everyone died way back. Interesting historical, I think when they got there, when Moscow, everything was burned. Yeah, everything was burned. They realized they realized they were going. And then we have some of these straight lines here.
It doesn't have to be
This is here split off. And this is split off.
You know, I have class in Rutgers. Right, they're going to put us in our group again, right? Okay, that's like, I have more disciplines in our class, so. 1 to 3. I would like to have like one. Okay. So maybe what moment? 11. Okay. Just text you. Thanks.
Yeah, you can set next to or you can shift Jerry, yes, you're gonna ask me some more questions. Yeah. Let me get outside and we'll talk about sensors.
这一块的东西是
I have to go.
mean, I was thinking maybe UCLA.
We should all just read up